Our people in Florida have had a rough night. Hurricane Milton making landfall while we all slept. The powerful storm, accompanied by tornadoes and floods, has caused widespread damage across the state. People are being warned not to visit areas by the hurricane. The state governor, Ron DeSantis, says the damage is not the worst-case scenario, adding that the storm surge is far below the levels seen during Hurricane Helen a few weeks ago.
The moment Hurricane Milton unleashes its fury in Florida, whipping up deadly tornadoes, destroying homes with high winds and causing widespread flooding. The storm made landfall Wednesday evening at around 8:30 p.m. as a Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour. Millions of homes and businesses are without power. In downtown St. Petersburg, a large crane under construction fell onto a neighboring building. Some are also without drinking water. At least 2 deaths were reported at the retirement community in Fort Pierce on the eastern coast of Florida, while at least 4 deaths have also been confirmed in St. Lucie County. Meanwhile, CCTV footage captures flood water reaching the top of a restaurant staircase in the Florida city of Fort Myers. Surveillance cameras also captured strong winds and flood waters closing in on a beach resort in Fort Myers. The devastating impact can also be seen on Florida's landmark stadium as intense winds forced open the roof of the facility. In the Florida city of Tampa, the police department rescues 15 people, including young children, from their homes after it was struck by a falling tree.
It's okay, Bubba. It's okay. It's okay. You're okay. That's it. That's it. Let's go.
And amid the risk, some residents drove about 1 mile from their home in Tampa to see the surge of Hurricane Milton, the Hillsborough Bay. 46-year-old Robert Russell describes the experience of witnessing Mother Nature as awesome.
I was just trying to see if all the water is out of the bay. Usually when we get storms like this, all the water retreats out of the bay and you can just about walk across. And I just want to see what kind of conditions we were looking at today. I'm absolutely don't want to risk my life, but it's to a certain degree, it's awesome to see Mother Nature in this kind of, with this kind of force.
Storm Milton is now moving into the Atlantic Ocean, but hurricane-forced winds and rain are continuing. Authorities say the storm surges remain a concern both on the west and east coasts of Florida, and there could be even more tornadoes.
Well, flood experts have been weighing in on the deadly hurricane, calling it very dangerous. Flood scientist Hannah Cloak says people do not realize the risk they're in as they overlook storm surges which cause destructions and death. She predicts more hurricanes will make landfall due to climate change.
Storm surge is one of the biggest risks that we have with hurricanes. And that's when the water piles onto the land and it's swept on with the very strong winds, and also the low pressure lifts the ocean up as well. And it can sweep quite a long way onto the land, particularly when we've got high tide. That can be very dangerous. People think about hurricanes and they think about the very strong winds, and that is, of course, dangerous, as are tornadoes. But the storm surge itself can sweep inland and flood people to a very great depth. People don't realise the risk they're in. It can pick up debris that has been lying around because of those strong winds. And sadly, lots of people die because of storm surge because they don't understand the risk they're in. It's really difficult to measure rainfall on the ground in these really big, strong storms, and often our observations, our equipment on the ground is completely overwhelmed. But what we have seen is some very high rainfall totals already, and that's on top of already wet ground, very, very wet already. So there's nowhere for that rain to go apart from to flood people.
Well, former U.S. President, beg your pardon, and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump sent prayers up for residents of Florida at his rally in Pennsylvania. However, Trump once again criticized the Biden administration for its response to Tropical Storm Helene, which wreaked havoc across North Carolina. He says would visit Florida to assess the impact of the damage of Milton and help in recovery efforts and reconstruction.
Before we begin, I want to send our prayers to the people of Florida getting hit just about now. In a little while, you're going to see a hurricane like we haven't seen in a long time, as well as all of the people still recovering from Hurricane Helene. So we have North Carolina's been hit very hard, and this administration has not done a proper job at all. Terrible, terrible. Nobody's seen anything like it. But we just pray for everybody. We want them all to be good, and we're going to be there hopefully soon, and we're going to help them rebuild and get it all back together. And we hope that God will keep them safe. God will keep them safe. Just 27 days from now, we're going to win Pennsylvania. We're going to defeat Kamala Harris. And we are going to make America great again.
Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, Governor Ron DeSantis says the damage caused by Hurricane Milton is not the worst-case scenario. What can he mean by this?
Well, you know, I know many are a bit concerned and confused because of the fact that you see such devastation in the city and in the state of Florida as a whole. But what we know is that there was expected to be a Category 5, almost 6 hurricane that was set to hit the coast, the west coast portion of Florida. But we know that in some regions it was only a Category 1 storm. In Siesta Key, Florida, it was around a Category 3 hurricane that hit. And so that is was not definitely expected. It was not expected to have that type of reduction in speed and wind and rainfall. So I think that's really what that's referring to, is that we were expecting something much larger to hit the region.
However, the extent of damage was more structural. We saw buildings destroyed. We've also seen people having to be rescued from harm's way. A family rescued after a tree fell on their home. But there are also some hard-to-reach areas where even emergency services are finding it difficult to reach. What will happen to those people?
You are correct. At this time, there's only 4 known deaths as a result of the storm. But as you noted, there are some hard-to-reach areas. For those who are familiar with the geographic region of Florida, there's a lot of small keys, which are almost like mini islands or inlets off the coast of Florida that have totally been flooded, that have been overtaken through the storm, and obviously major destruction has occurred in those areas. And so those are the areas that it's making it very difficult for emergency response teams to reach those individuals. Those are the ones that people are most concerned about, because obviously electricity is out, and it's also making it hard to reach them sometimes via phone, especially depending on the cellular service in those areas, and also not having access to the electrical systems does make it difficult for reaching someone as well.
But how far can emergency services go?
Well, emergency services are on a search and rescue mission, and so they are going to go by boat, they're going to go by car, they're going to, you know, obviously extremely flooded regions, they'll have to find other means other than by car. They'll have to potentially use some sort of rafting devices to get to homes, and they'll be probably checking some homes home by home, literally going on foot to try to make sure that there's no one in them that's stranded and without ability to come out.
Is the worst over now as regards the impact of the storm on Florida?
Well, the more challenging piece that was observed is that there were several tornadoes that were as a result of the hurricane, and these tornadoes tore through several parts of Florida. As you go more inlet, you'll see some of that destruction by those tornadoes. So those were, I think, what was greatest concern, especially for the debris that was left after Hurricane Helene. And so that was the first area of concern. Now there's still some rainfall happening, some slight winds in some some of the regions that are still close to the coast, as the hurricane has now gone back out to the ocean. And so until that is over, I think there could be, a little bit more concern, but obviously not to the extent of yesterday evening. And the hope is that there's nothing brewing anytime soon.
With Hurricane Helene, we saw lots of homes destroyed, homes floating on water, be carried away. People lost a lot. People lost memories. People lost, childhood homes and all of that. So far, what have been the losses that people can identify or have identified after Milton?
The losses are quite similar. As you said, childhood memories, homes have been lost. And see where the Tampa Bay Buccaneer entire roof came of that building. So the level of destruction, I think, is far beyond what anyone can really grapple with at this time. I think that it's really search and rescue, and then they're going to have to observe to see how much damage has really occurred and what will be the cost to rebuild.
Right. And Maria, we understand the center of the hurricane is pulled away from Florida's east coast. What does it mean for the state, and where could the hurricane be headed next?
Well, the hurricane is headed out to sea, and so the hope is that it does not head anywhere toward Florida at this time, but they are monitoring to see if there's any potential challenges that could be faced in the Florida region or even further up the eastern seaboard.
Now, there are millions of homes still without power. These are homes we believe still standing despite the storm. Any word on how soon power will be restored? And is that the major impact from the storm?
It's not the major impact. It does become quite challenging for rescue, and also as we talk about being able to identify the extent of the damage when you do have that level of power outage. Unfortunately, sometimes it will take about a week or so to restore the power when you're talking about those type of damages that have incurred. And then additionally, you're talking about, as you said, millions of people. I think there's over 3 million businesses and homes. And so it'll be little by little, but the hardest hit regions, it could be quite some time before they see a restoration in electrical services, which then creates further potential risk. And also it does create potential further damages for individuals' homes and properties.
Thanks again, Maria, and do stay safe. Russia has carried out its third attack in 4 days on the port of Ukraine's Odessa region, killing 8 people. The strikes targeted port infrastructure, and all victims were Ukrainian. A wave of strikes on Ukraine's ports on the Black Sea coast coincided with a European tour by President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is visiting leaders in London, Paris, and Rome. In Downing Street, he met UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and NATO's new Secretary General Mark Rutte, who warned this week that Ukraine could be facing its toughest winter since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Zelensky had been due to meet U.S. President Joe Biden along with other Western allies in Berlin on Saturday, but Biden canceled his trip because of the threat to the U.S. from Hurricane Milton. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte today joined Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer for a trilateral meeting in London. The trio discussed the support Ukraine would need in its war against Russia in the coming months. Asked about long-range weapons, Rutte told reporters, "We discussed it today, but in the end, it is up to the individual allies." Rutte also said that NATO will begin its annual nuclear exercise on Monday, October 14, against the backdrop of heightened nuclear rhetoric from Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to NATO officials, F-35A fighter jets and B-52 bombers will be among some 60 aircraft from 13 nations taking part in the Steadfast Noon exercise hosted by Belgium and the Netherlands.
The annual nuclear exercise, Steadfast Noon, will start on Monday. We will have more than 60 aircraft involved training sessions. The whole exercise will particularly focus on the United Kingdom, the North Sea, but also Belgium and the Netherlands. And in an uncertain world, it is vital that we test our defense and that we strengthen our defense so that our adversaries know that NATO is ready and is able to respond to any threat.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called on Moldovans to vote in October 20 referendum on joining the EU. She was making the remarks during a visit to Chisinau, where she held talks with pro-Western President Maya Sandu today. Moldova, a former Soviet East European republic of 2.5 million people, located between Romania and Ukraine, is holding a referendum on enshrining EU membership as a strategic goal in the constitution. The referendum falls the same day as a presidential election at which Sandu is seeking a second fourth term, and comes amid what the Moldovan police says has been intensive Russian election interference, something Moscow denies.
There's a big milestone ahead for the people of Moldova. Citizens will soon go to the polls and decide sovereignly whether to anchor Moldova's European future in your constitution. I encourage Moldovans to use their vote and express their free choice. It is for you, the Moldovans, to decide. It is your sovereign choice what to do with your country, and no one can interfere.
It will be the turn of the Lithuanians this Sunday, where citizens are expected to punish the center-right government of Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė. The election is being conducted amid mounting living costs, wealth gaps and deteriorating public services, while reaffirming their support for high defense spending to counter potential threats from Russia. Opinion polls show the Social Democrats, a former communist party led by 64-year-old Vilija Blinkevičiūtė, leading ahead of the ballots with around 18%, while Šimonytė's Homeland Union is running third with 9%. A former finance minister and fiscal hawk, 49-year-old Šimonytė, has built a broad consensus in the Baltic nation of 2.9 million people on the need to increase military spending since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, doubling the country's defense budget. However, the inflation exceeding 20% two-year goal, the second highest in the Eurozone after neighboring Latvia, rising living costs have weighed on her popularity, fueling deep-seated anger in parts of society over those wealth gaps, some of the largest in the EU.
Well, we have the very popular leader. Vilija Blinkevičiūtė. She's a very experienced politician. She has a wide support across all groups of the society. Also, because of the political agenda we actually pursue in the parliament right now, we register the law amendments which, actually brings some hope for the people that the issues they face with income inequality, with rising prices, with public services access and things like that, it will be solved within the next term in the parliament and in the government.
We made some mistakes, maybe political mistakes, but at the same time, it's not time to think about what we did wrong, but to think what we are going to do in the future. And I think if you look at our situation, economy, in defense spending, investment in defense, and doing all think on how to build us stronger and to deter our adversaries. I think in these two fronts, we have good results.
The main danger I see, the main problem I see, that no matter what coalition will be made, this coalition will be very weak and fragile.
Taiwan will not be rejoining China, at least not on President William Lai's watch. During his most high-profile public address since taking office earlier this year, he pledged to uphold Taiwan's self-governing status. At the same time, Lai promised to maintain the status quo of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and pledged to cooperate with Beijing on issues such as climate change, combating infectious diseases, and maintaining regional security. Responding to Lai's speech, a spokeswoman for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it exposed his intransigent position on Taiwan independence. Where is he? That's a question on the lips of many Cameroonians who have not seen President Paul Biya since he attended the China-Africa Summit in early September. The country's ambassador in France insists the president is in good health and in Geneva, his habitual base when away from home. Other sources suggest this is because he needs to rest under medical supervision after a heavy diplomatic schedule in July and in August. Just keep in mind the president is 91 years old and is Africa's oldest head of state and the second longest serving after Equatorial Guinea President Teodoro Obiang Nguema. The head of Cameroon's civil cabinet, while condemning those he called mischievous individuals for speculating about the president's health and eventual death, insists President Paul Biya is in excellent health. Meanwhile, the Africa Broadcasting Service, a news outlet based in Houston, Texas, has reported Biya is dead and stands by its story. A while ago, my colleague Ayotunde Balogun spoke with the Cameroonian economist Eric Acha in Luxembourg on how President Biya's absence has been tipping the balance within Cameroon and on the international scene.
In this part of the world, I mean, in Africa, African leaders, whenever this sort of issue comes up, it tends to cause a whole lot of reaction, should I say, from the citizens and even political opponents alike. What do you think is the mood right now in Cameroon, particularly for those who are opposed to Paul Biya's presidency in Cameroon? He's been there like forever, and we're having this issue. And this is quite similar with some other African countries that we've been able to experience in time past.
Absolutely. I think you are spot on that. Now, this boils down to one issue, the personality cult, which is created around our leaders in Africa, where people believe, or those around the head of state, or the head of state himself, believes that his health issues should remain, or should always be a top secret. Because, believe you me, there would have been nothing wrong if the president was unwell, and the government came out clear and said, giving the very charged program, which the president has had over the last couple of months, he is feeling tired, or he has had some medical emergencies and is undergoing treatment. I am not sure the situation will be as bad as it is today. But because there is this personality call where they always create a situation to make the president feel like he's immortal. Mind you, we are talking here of a 91-year-old president who has been at the helm of the country for 42 years. He joined the government in 1960, in the 60s, after just finishing his education in France. He came in, worked as a secretary at the presidency for the former president, Amadou Ahidjo, and then was parachuted to the position of prime minister, where he held from 1975 until 1982, when he became president. From 1982 till this day, he has been president. So the situation or the circumstances here are not about someone who is in his 40s or 50s. It's a 91-year-old, meaning that even if he is dead, it is normal. He is not immortal. At some point, he will die. We all will die. But because of the personality call, because those around Paul Biya have made him feel like he's immortal, That's why they are playing this hide-and-seek game and keeping Cameroonians in suspense at a point where the country should be preparing for its transition. Cameroonians in Cameroon who are opposed to Paul Biya desire one thing at this point. You have caused so much mayhem, you have caused so much chaos, you've caused so much pain to Cameroonians. At this point where you will soon be exiting, the least Cameroonians are expecting from you is to ensure a smooth transition. Now, you creating this chaotic situation where nobody knows where you are, nobody knows the condition of your health, is leaving many asking too many questions. Many questions are being answered. And those who have thought that he could do what Cameroonians may even forgive him during his last days are beginning to say, you know what, this man, the Paul Biya man, is showing so much disdain for Cameroonians.
With the conclusion of the high-level week of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, the UN Second Committee has commenced its 79th session with its annual general debates. Now, Nigeria's diplomat Ezekwesili David Anyegbu, who was elected vice chair of the UN Second Committee in June this year, delivered Nigeria's national statement. The diplomat, in his remarks, called for the fulfillment of commitments by developed countries to enable means of implementation of the SDGs for developing countries, which he said could be done in part through provision of climate finance and increase in foreign direct investment flows to Africa.
Critical importance is the issue, the question of enabling environment for investment, trade. We've often had this discussion in various forums, and very often the narrative or the description we tend to give is that the burden of creating enabling environment solely lies within the shores of developing countries, and that is not entirely correct. For us to achieve the SDGs, we need to understand that in discussing enabling environment for investment, there's a shared responsibility with all the partners in the international trading system. Because take, for instance, my country, I cited this most recently as well, our non-oil export for last year depreciated to $4.5 billion from $4.8 billion. This is important because as we look to project transition from fossil fuel and or whatnot, and it depreciated, and in our stock taking, we realized that part of the reason for the depreciation is export rejection. Now, you can't transit or diversify your economy without the requisite partnership internationally. You can't, if your goods are being described as not being up to standard, you know, there's hardly any way forward for such an economy. So we need this partnership to support local production back home. We have some of the best youths that are well industrious, so to speak.
Vice Chair of the UN Second Committee, Ezekwesili David Anyegbu. A South Korean author, Han Kang, has won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life. The prize is awarded by the Swedish Academy and is worth 11 million Swedish crowns, that is over $1 million. Han Kang, the first South Korean to win the Literature Prize, began her career in 1993 with the publication of a number of poems in a magazine, Literature and Society, while her prose debut came in 1995 with a short story collection, Love of Yosun.
It's very weird.
Hundreds of people, including corporate leaders, politicians and celebrities, gathered in Mumbai today, paying their last respects to one of India's most respected business tycoons, Ratan Tata, who died at the age of 86. Known for his exemplary business acumen and philanthropic nature, as chairman, he led various companies under the Tata conglomerate for more than 20 years, which had revenue of $165 billion in 2023 up until 2024. Tata had been in a Mumbai hospital since Monday, but the cause of his death has not been made public. Our thoughts and prayers with his family this time. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.